Okay. Hopefully you guys can understand me. I haven't been able to understand you guys today, so hopefully you can understand me. There was some cutbacks, so we were going to get a translator for my accent, but we couldn't fit it in the budget. Okay, so I'm on the clock. I've only got 15 minutes, so I better move along. So today what we're going to talk about is I'm just going to do a quick introduction, just about the company, about myself, and then a quick overview about the project. So we're going to look at standards, how we manage the project. We're going to look at software, the project delivery, the challenges, and then we're going to talk about a process that we're currently doing, which is the verification process that's happening on the project at the moment. So let's jump straight in. So just a little bit about DCT. If you don't know, I suppose this is our mission statement, and I suppose it's really about ensuring people, procedures, and technology, and how we integrate that, and making sure that it's part of what we do, not just for the staff, but also for our clients and what we deliver. So this is a couple of years ago when we won the best startup in Ireland, and then also we just won an award this year in London, which was great. So we've offices in the UK, Ireland, Croatia, and Argentina. And I suppose what we do is primarily BIM modeling, digital project management. We've geospatial department, and we also do custom solutions. So depending on the needs of our clients, VR setups, digital site boxes, whatever the guys need. So this, I think we know this. This was last year. This is the Esplanade. I probably didn't say that properly. Probably sounds different in a Dublin accent. But this is, I suppose, what we do in terms of the geospatial. So I'll jump on again, time on time. A little bit about me. I suppose I'm an electrician by trade, then an engineer, and I suppose I moved quickly through the design side, the construction side, in terms of BIM, and working on every side in terms of the mechanical, the electrical, and that kind of brought me into what we do at the moment in DCT, and how we try to implement construction, and construction is core of what we do. So just a little bit about me. Okay, so the project is Dublin Airport, and this, I suppose, was driven by the EU, because they had to upgrade the baggage control systems and the security throughout the baggage handling areas. And just to give you a scale of this project, I've been on it personally. I was working on it since 2019, and we're still on the project today. This has to be done live. So we're working in the hand baggage area as the baggage are coming in. So we've T1, if any of you have been in Dublin lately and you've had big problems getting through check-ins, that's not our problem. Don't blame us, nothing to do with us. But we've T1, so you have 8 bay, 6 bay, up to area 14, back through. So that was a retrofit project. So we had to basically utilize what was in there and work with what was already in there. In the middle, you have BCBs, the baggage control building, and on the right-hand side, we have T2. So T2 is it would be a new build on Dublin Airport, but we had to retrofit that building. So we had 2 retrofit projects plus a new build. Amazing, I tell you, the drama trying to deal with that, but I'll tell you a bit of the story. So because of the different projects and the different buildings, we had different stakeholders. First problem we had was we had a different client representative on one building than another building. So the first problem we had then is we had different deliverables. So we had different deliverables on T2 compared to T1 and the BCB, which was a bit of a nightmare. But we also have a different design team. And these are all the project stakeholders that we had to manage. So our role in the project, firstly, was we were working on behalf of the main contractor. We were working with Colin Construction. So we had to manage all the digital aspects of the project, new build and retrofit, and make sure everything worked together. Later on, I'll talk about our role as working with the mechanical contractors and what we did, and then what we're currently doing is the verification process. So we have to go down, we have to scan, and then we have to do a comparison to make sure that we're in tolerance of the level of accuracy of what the DAA expects. So this is our roles on the project. So in terms of Colin and working with the GC, we were digital project managers, and what that really entailed was managing everything in relation to BIM on the project. So we had to look after and agree the scope of works with the client. We were creating the project standard documents. We have to, some of the, when we did the onboarding, we did a skills assessment. Some of the teams weren't very capable, so we had to do some training and upskilling. So we do the standards, weekly process and weekly federation, weekly meetings and so on. And I suppose we had to manage it, and this list on your left, if you're looking at the screen, these are all the list of the documents that we had to create for each area, but also with approval from the client and the different client representative. So we had the BIM execution plan, the responsibility matrix, the master information delivery plan, the task information delivery plan. And then because this was a design build project, we brought in some custom documents. So we brought in a handover document between the design consultants and the contractors, because we don't want any messing around. Once you hand the model over, well, this model isn't fit for purpose, we can't use this, we can't use that. We are on a really strict program that basically that the GC gets hit with penalties if we don't hit our timeline. So we wanted to make sure that the handover happened really smoothly. Some other things we had to do on the project was we had to break up because the building is so big, and when you see the baggage handling, it's just like a maze. We had to break it up into zones. We had to have a zonal strategy. We had to make sure everybody followed it, and that kind of ties into the asset management later on in the project. So some other difficulties that we had to utilize different platforms for different, I suppose, use cases on the project. So we had the client, which is the DA, we had to use BIM 360, and then at the end of the project, we had to use Maximo because we had to make sure we were getting the asset data up. For Column, we had to use Viewpoint, and then also these are the other platforms that we utilize. So obviously our standard federation would be Navisworks, but also what we gave to the guys on site was we gave them Revisto, and sometimes we would put the point cloud scan into Revisto so they could see what's actually on site, what's in the model. So just a quick overview on that. Other controls that we put in place was trackers. So we had different trackers for different areas with weekly trackers. We had trackers depending on what we had to deliver to the client and what they needed to see. And again, this wouldn't be our normal way that we would do it. We have different processes internally, but depending on our project, we build it depending on the needs of our clients. For this one, it had to be Excel. It's not the best way of tracking. It's not the way that we do it personally, but it's the way we had to do it on this project. So it allows us to track, to give percentages, to close out areas, to make sure they're clash-free, to ensure that we were delivering what needed to go down to site. So just to give us some overview of the complexity, on the bottom there you see that's actually a little bit stripped back, the hand baggage conveyors in pink. And up top you'll see what we had in Navisworks. And we had a base model. So the base model was the base model. We went in, it was because it's a retrofit project, we had to go in, scan the building, then from the scan we built the base model. Now, between when the scan was done and when the model was produced and when we started on site, there was a couple of things that popped up, but bar that, there was no issues. Other problems that we had was initially we had all the models in Irish Grid and we had to change the ITM coordinates problems in Revit. I'm sure we've all had them issues. But the fact that we were using on a retrofit project, we had to utilize different ways of approaching. So depending on it, we had to have stages. So in the model, we had to show the stages. So we had a demolition stage, so what was coming out of the site. We had a retained, so what was staying in the site. We had new design, and then we had a new install. So depending on what was going in and what stage of the retrofit project would depend on the color of what was utilized in the model. And again, as I said, we had the difficulty of going from a retrofit to a new build. So here is an example between T2 and BCB. There's an area called the link bridge. And this is where we interface services. So we had different conveyors. So on T2 we had Siemens on one side, and they had to meet with Van der Lander on the other side, so they had to meet. And we had a problem, because you see here in the purple, that's the conveyors, and we have a mast above it to allow for the movement zone on the conveyors. But we wanted them to align in, like, where we joined in the link bridge. But what we had was, Siemens are like, well, I'm not moving, you move. And then you had Van der Lander saying, well, I'm not moving, you move. And these are the sort of politics that you get, again, in the virtual environment. So we had to deal with this, so many stakeholders on the project. But look, we got there in the end. The link bridge is built, thank God. But this shows you just some of the complexities of what we had to deal with in terms of working with a new build and then working with a retrofit project. So this, yeah, trying to coordinate everything. New builds are easy, retrofits can be a little bit more difficult. Again, connecting the new with the old. Here you'll see in the green is a platform, new platform. But in the blue, you'll see that these these cable trays were already installed on site, but we needed to get them out because you can see there in the purple, the conveyors are there. So what we had to do was a tag and trace. So if anybody's Sparks in here, they'll know what that is. But a tag and trace is basically chasing every cable back to the board, identifying a tag and a trace, and that's a very long-winded process, but we had to do it because it was part of what we did. So this was difficult in the sense that we needed to get everything in, we needed to get everything out, and look, we just had to make it happen. And we needed to make sure that the conveyors could get out. In the future, we needed to make sure that the conveyors could get in. And then also when we were taking them out, we needed to make sure, okay, well, what services do we need to move to make sure that we can get them in, out, and future-proof. So these are the difficulties that we had. So this is just an example of one of the X-ray machines going in. And because of the type of project, I don't have too many pictures of the GA because of the type of building that it is. But this is the BCB, and it probably looks like a mess, and in some instances it is. But what we have here, and I'm going to explain the picture, is again the purple is the conveyors with the mass above it to allow for the movement of the baggage. We have step overs because the guys have to make sure they can get over. And again, the tree in the middle is the conveyors. We have the control panels below. But in the green there, when we do this on all projects, we have a movement zone for the toolbox. So a big thing on these is the side of the conveyors would have motors. So we need to make sure we can get the conveyors in, we need to make sure we can maintain them. But the motors on the side, we need to make sure we can get the trolleys in and around with the toolboxes. And that's basically what we had to do there. We had to put in that green mass. And this is basically a standard practice. We would do this on all our projects, but specifically on this, because it was so tight, because we don't have the time to make sure, if it goes in, that we can't get it back out. It was basically, it needed to go in, and we needed to make sure it was maintainable and it was accessible in the future. So this is some of the challenges that we had in the main contractor role. So just touching on here, the mechanical contractor. Again, we would have came in on the contract side, so we would have had to accept the model from the design team. So I would say it wasn't up to standard, but look, we got there in the end, early engagement. We were able to support the design consultants and get the model up to speed. And then once we brought the model up to speed, we created the as-builds. Then we started to have to bring in the point cloud scan. So this is working for the mechanical subcontractors. So we would have had to bring in the scan, move the scan to match, move the model to match the scan, and then reissue it. We're actually reissuing it to ourselves because we were doing the verification, which I'll show you in a moment, for the main contractor. So it was, of course, it was right every time because you can never make mistakes if you're doing it yourself. But we did have to make sure that it met a level of accuracy. We also had a number of attributes that we had to put in there to meet our asset deliverable. And again, all of them assets went up into maximal. So we had to pull the data out of Revit. We pulled it out of the database, pushed and pulled the data, depending on what we're using. Sometimes you just use add-in, sometimes you use Dynamo, depending on what we were doing. And then we just use a shared parameter file at the start to get everything in there. So this is just a quick run through of an area of the airport. It is fairly packed of services. I did the same with the models that I pulled up there. I pulled some of the services out. But that just gives you a kind of a feel of how packed it is and how little space. Because again, we had to get the sprinkler, the mechanical, the electrical, the lights, the fire alarm, everything in there, in the space that we had. So it was tough. We're doing this on a number of projects, and we were doing it on this, is the verification process. And it is a little bit long-winded, it's tough, it's hard, but it's starting to become a lot more normal, I suppose, in Ireland, in the UK, and we're seeing it now coming into Europe, where we're having to verify what's gone in on site. And the only way to really do it is to use Verity, and it's tough because it's buggy. And it's tough because we have to break the models down. You need to break up the models. You need to break it down to a size that you can do your analysis. But on this project, that's what we had to do. We had to compare the Insta as-built model with the scans, do an analysis, issue reports. And how we done that then was we issued the reports via Navisworks. So we have a script that pulled the information out in Verity and then pushed it into Navisworks, we created a viewpoint, and then that was issued to the subcontractors, so they knew where the issue was, and then we also had the scan. So this, if you can see up here, the purple to the kind of cyan, that's how you see what the differences are. So this kind of gives you an overview of the verification process. And as I mentioned, it is long-winded, and in some projects we won't need it because we don't need that level of accuracy. But for this client and for the need of this project, we had to do it. And we're just in the final kind of stages of that. What we found, I suppose, in terms of the project, we did get a lot of benefits in this project, working with the client at the start because they knew what they wanted. After they appointed a BIM manager, they knew what they wanted. So we got there. So we realised the benefits with having a client that knew what they wanted. We agreed the scope of works documents, all the BEP, the asset requirements. We agreed all that at the start. It was really good. So having a client that's educated, Michael Early is the BIM manager in the DA, amazing. Knowing exactly the process, having that whole process built from design to construction to as-built. As we went through the building from T2 to T1 to BCB, we were able to make that, I suppose, more efficient. That enabled, I suppose, the GC on this project to see the benefits of that, because we were having very, very little issues as the project went along, because we were coordinating everything in the model. We were, I suppose, solidifying that with the scans. So as we were modeling, we were coordinating, then we were going out and scanning. And because we were scanning, the subcontractors on the project, they wouldn't just put something in. They wouldn't just have it drawn and say, sure, I'll run it there, because they knew we were going to check it. So everybody was trying to align to the model, which doesn't always happen. We know this, but it did on this project, so we definitely got the benefits. I suppose at the moment, as I mentioned, T2, finished, thank God. T1, 70% complete. We're just finishing off 8Bay at the moment, down scanning and completing the models. And the BCB, we're 90% complete. So hopefully you enjoyed that story. Thank you.